Hello again, Andy here. I am now wearing not my hoodie because it was really very hot, but I still have my little pin here for Unisonis. This is like a genuinely cool like design. It's all over the Unisonis merch, and it's actually more of the typical kind of design or whatever. So I got my little Unisonis thing here. So part two of analyzing Unisonis, or whatever the hell I'm gonna call this. So basically, I just kind of want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into like Unisonis and like just kind of like its implications and just kind of how perfect it is in terms of the message that it's trying to go for. Because the whole thing about it is, as I've mentioned before, Unisonis is all about confronting death and accepting the inevitability of death, right? But there's more to it than that. There's also this idea that you make choices in your life and you have to live with those choices, and you only really have one life to live. And I think that's something that that is actually the message that Mark and Ethan are really trying to get at, that you shouldn't take your life for granted, because death can happen at any time, and we are all going to die. And this is honestly really very cool. There's another YouTuber that I follow that, if you're at all interested in Unisonis, I would highly recommend. She's Caitlin Doty, and her YouTube channel is Ask a Mortician. Basically, she runs the Order of the Good Death, and she's all about like death positivity and educating people about death in general. Like, kind of her earlier videos are like explaining how embalming works, explaining cremation, explaining like, can you be buried at sea? How does that work? And also like historical type videos too, such as like the history of Victorian death photos. Spoilers, those are not as it's not as scandalous or as real as one might think, especially if you're talking about like the standing death. I don't know, go watch her video about that. For those of you who like Unisonis specifically, she has one, I forget what it's called. I think it's called like the Phallic Capers or something like that, where it's a video about Romanoff's penis and how like there was like the story of Romanoff's like desiccated penis after he died, and also Napoleon's penis. So just the stories about those. So if you like Unisonis, that's what I would definitely recommend. So her stuff is really good. But basically, I think that like Mark and Ethan's channel is kind of a, I don't know, like sillier version of that, and I think it's also like a more lived in version of that. Because here's the thing about like not taking life for granted, it's really hard to not do that. Like, it's really hard to live every day to your fullest, because you kind of have to live, right? And I think that's very well executed in a project like this, because they're making a video every single day, right? And so because of that, you are just going to have some videos that are just like purely silly, or just like they're not anything special, right? Like, some of them are just going to be regular ass videos, and I think there's something very poignant about that. There's something poignant about the unremarkable in life. And I also think that Unisonis does a very good job of encapsulating the absurdity of life as well. Unisonis really, and here's where we're gonna get real pretentious, Unisonis really kind of brings to mind Albert Camus. And Albert Camus is like an old French philosopher, and he is most famous for his book about Sisyphus. Sisyphus is like the Greek god, who was, I don't know if he was a god actually. He's a Greek figure who was basically punished to push a boulder up the mountain for all eternity, right? And Camus basically kind of made the comparison between like living life and pushing that boulder up, because the thing is, like, why are we even alive? Like, there really is no reason for our existence. I mean, religious people would probably disagree with this, like God and all of that stuff, etc., etc. But Camus basically, he basically points out that life is inherently absurd because there is no purpose to our life. There's no reason to exist. There's no reason to live. And basically, he was kind of quoted as saying, we must imagine Sisyphus being happy. So basically kind of absurdism, I might be explaining this incorrectly, but absurdism is all about accepting the absurd. Just sort of looking at your life and being like, and looking at existence and being like, you know what, this bullshit it is pretty absurd, it is pretty crazy, but you know what, that's fine. You exist in spite of the absurdity, and to kind of give you an idea of how this guy is, Camus is also quoted as to saying, the only true philosophical question, like the only true question that philosophers really need to be concerned with is the question of suicide. Like, that's this guy, okay? And for the record, eventually, like, he kind of gets around to saying that, like, no, suicide isn't the answer because, like, life, while it is absurd and while it can seem capricious and cruel, this life exists. Like, even if it is absurd, even if there is no reason, it would be a waste to not live it. It would be a waste to not experience life to the fullest because, like, it's here. We don't know the reason for it, but it's here. We gotta do this. So, I think that the fact that Unus Annus is so absurd, I think it really encapsulates that kind of philosophy of just grab life by the balls because, we don't know why we're here, right? But it doesn't matter. We should live our life to the fullest just because. And for the record, I do think that it's also interesting, as I mentioned before, religious people might disagree with this analysis that I'm giving, but I would like to point out that Unus Annus is canonically secular. Mark and Ethan have a video where it's the video where they take that test to see whether they're going to heaven or hell, and they kind of started off with a little bit of a diatribe about how, like, neither of them are religious. Ethan goes on record saying a few times that he believes there's nothing after death, that there's just nothing, it's just blackness. And Mark has gone on record talking about how his problem with Christianity is this idea that you don't do goodness for the sake of goodness. You do it in order to get to heaven for a reward and not for its own sake, and that was a problem that he had with Christianity even when he was a Christian. So I think that the combination of the inherent secularity of Unus Annus and its absurdity really makes it very good bedfellows with the likes of Albert Camus and absurdism, and I think that I don't know, it's just a really good exploration of that idea. Furthermore, Albert Camus was not really, at least from what I understand, for the record, I've not read any Albert Camus. All my credibility out the window. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Brows Held High, he talks about Albert Camus a lot, and Philosophy Tube. I believe he talks about Albert Camus as well. I can't remember, but I know for a fact Brows Held High. But from what I understand about Albert Camus, he doesn't seem like a moralizing kind of guy. He definitely seems like one of those philosophers that's like, I don't know, I'm not sure, like, how into moral philosophy the dude was, I kind of put him in the same realm as, like, Nietzsche or, whatever. Of course I could be wrong. You guys, anybody, please correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong about that. However, I really like the fact that Unus Annus does kind of put this, I don't know, there really is this kind of sense of urgency that Unus Annus has. Like, they do a really good job of at once being, like, frivolous and irreverent, and, like, in the next breath being like, no, you do not have enough time. You gotta go. You've got to make your choices. You've got to go. You could die at any second. And I don't know if that's moral, actually, because I'm not sure if Unis Annus necessarily points out like the need to do good in the world before you die. Maybe I'm just kind of getting that mixed up with Markiplier, because I've definitely started watching both their channels a little bit since Unis Annus, but from what I understand, both Markiplier and Ethan are like really big on charity and that kind of thing, and so maybe I'm just conflating the two. Well, I'm not editing this, so sorry, that was just a complete tangent, but I do really like that about it as well, the fact that there is this sense of urgency, and I don't know, I think they just do a really good job of communicating that, as well as like bringing about this very absurd spirit to life, because I very much agree with that mindset. Like, I am not religious myself, and I'm also like very, urgently thinking about like, I could die any time, so that's why I really need to do something with my life, right? And then often I'll just stay in bed and watch YouTube. Depression is great. It's awesome. Anyway, so I've completely lost my train of thought. I hate when that happens. So because of that, because, I am thinking about, like, I could die at any point, and that life is inherently absurd, but at the end of the day, like, you should live life because I really appreciate that messaging and that mindset. So that was part 1. I'll probably, like, that's probably, like, Unis Annus and the absurd. That's probably what I'll call it. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked that. Have you watched some Unis Annus yet? Have you caught up since last we spoke? I sure hope so. More than likely, if anybody does watch this, you guys will probably already be caught up on Unis Annus. Let's be real here. So, until then, memento mori. I'll see you tomorrow.